Well, welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. And hey, what a delight to have with us today Professor James Hirsen. He's JD, MA in Media Psychology. Hey, maybe he can figure me out. He's a New York Times best-selling author, a commentator, media analysis, and law professor. Wow. And I don't know, maybe he jumps tall buildings during the weekend. Hi, James. Good to see you.
Hey, good to be with you. How are you?
Good. Thank you. Merry Christmas. Can I say that to a law professor?
Oh, absolutely. To this one, you can. Merry Christmas to you and a blessed New Year.
All right. Nice to have you with us. Boy, a lot to talk to you about. Hey, what do you think of, we just came through this whole thing of fake news, and yet we were propagated the last 3 weeks with fake news on the Electoral College. What do you think?
Well, that's the problem. I mean, the fake news is a fake story because what they're focusing their attention on is selective content that they don't like. And the phony news has been coming from the mainstream news sources. I mean, the New York Times has printed stories where their sources have come out and denied the stories. We've had the Washington Post print dubious stories, and all I have to do is mention the initials CNN to a group of people. They start chanting because CNN was caught colluding with the DNC. I mean, the breaches in journalistic ethics that have occurred would in the past have created a slew of resignations and firings. And yet what has happened is personnel that have committed these kinds of egregious acts have not only survived, but they've flourished. One example is this Glenn Thrush from Politico, who was caught sending articles to the Hillary Clinton campaign before they were published so that the campaign could edit the articles on Politico. And he was fired by Politico, and the New York Times hires him. So that's the kind of game that's played. I think the public sees through it now. And I think this whole fake news concept in meme is just an excuse, another one in a series of excuses for people that basically suffer from a syndrome, ERD, election results denial.
All right. Incoming President Donald Trump has found something else that really puts them in a tailspin. It's called social media, in particular, tweeting. He may set a new tone for the White House press corps. Go around him.
Exactly. You know, we always talked in the past about Ronald Reagan, and one of the things that Ronald Reagan could do is go over the media to the people. He was called the great communicator. Well, I think that Donald Trump has even more weapons in his arsenal than Ronald Reagan did. Ronald Reagan dealt with a media that was monopolized by, left-wing ideologues, which of course Trump does too, except Trump's got two very, very powerful weapons. One is, as you mentioned, the social media. His Twitter and Facebook combined is tens of millions of people instantly. And then, of course, it's amplified because the media can't help themselves but to follow his very well-constructed tweets and make them the lead story. But secondly, Trump can go out into the heartland and do a rally like he did with the thank you tour. I think that was a message. If there are members of Congress who are being obstructionist, Trump can go to their states and have rallies and maybe mention the fact that he's having problems with their local senator or their local representative. This is very, very powerful. Plus the fact that Trump himself, honed by 14 seasons of a hit television show, by the branding that basically no one understood, the fact that when you have a show on that has an audience of, say, 20 million people per show, and each show for 14 years, weekly during the television season, has an image of Trump as a decisive, successful business person, the power of that image was a big factor that most of the media didn't understand. And certainly not the political strategists did not understand, much like they didn't understand Ronald Reagan's communication technique. So yes, this is going to be very interesting to see when Trump wields these social media and rally weapons, how formidable they are, because he is going to run into a logjam with the bureaucracy in the Washington establishment.
I kind of expect Trump to do something that Reagan did. I was a young reporter at the time in Sacramento when Reagan was governor. And when he couldn't get something through the legislature, he went out into the district of the legislator that was opposing him and won over his constituents, which put pressure on that legislator to vote the way Ronald Reagan wanted him to go. And he did that as president. I got a funny feeling we may see that in Trump.
Well, that's exactly what I was mentioning with Trump's rallies. Can you imagine? And you covered that, so you saw it. And when Reagan did it, he was doing it with state senators and assemblymen and that sort of thing, but in terms of governorship. But can you imagine if there's one particular senator who's obstructionist, and Trump brings 30 or 40,000 people, or especially if it were someone who's a member of the House, and Trump goes to that particular district? It's a very powerful tool. Plus the fact that Trump's supporters resonate to him and will show up on a rally. He can say it's a legislative promotion rally. It's something to support the first 100 days. He'll come up with a catchy name that has to do with making America great again. And that will scare an individual member of the House or the Senate.
Well, in spite of the fact that the mainline press is in love with itself and they think they can recoup and move on, it appears that their rating's still around 6%. What do you think, Professor Hirsen, will happen to the mainstream media? And the reason I asked that, I had Dr. Lamero on several weeks ago. He wrote a book, Greatest Days of America, and he predicts in that book that the news media as we know it will get reorganized and it'll be a new news media by the end of Trump's first year. What do you think?
Well, we can see the trend lines clearly. I mean, we look at the latest Pew polls and other polling organizations. The media is held in the lowest esteem historically it's ever been, and rightly so. The media is, and I'm talking about the mainstream media, is totally untrustworthy. And again, to bring up, we have documentary proof that has never been denied. The content has never been denied. And I'm talking about the WikiLeaks emails and the John Podesta emails. That show this, that media not only was telling us falsehoods, and they did for almost a year and a half, and they did things that are, and you're a reporter, you understand this, every single reporter takes a course in media ethics, journalism ethics. The media justified breaching all of the principles of journalistic ethics. And the public understands, much like what happened in the United Kingdom, where they were bombarded for about 6 months from a corrupt media in the United Kingdom that told them that it would be the end of the world if they voted yes on Brexit. They would lose their homes, their jobs, their life as they knew it. And they knew better. And they shocked the world as America shocked, at least the media world, when poll after poll and person after person told them that Trump could not be elected. And the people knew better. And I think now there's this distrust of the media is creating vacuums and opportunities. And it's networks like yours, and it's talk shows, and it's websites, and people have available to them a multiplicity of sources. And people who want to know can find out by checking with those sources and get close to the truth, which is what the media is supposed to do. The First Amendment beneficiary is not supposed to be the media. It's supposed to be the people. Right. And they've forgotten that.
That's not to say that the media is not going to try to go after Trump every inch of the way, but he may have the momentum of the mood of the country with him to ignore them or to go ahead and continue to criticize them. You think that'll work or hurt?
I think that's his strategy. And I think so far, it certainly has worked. When you get into the nitty-gritty micro details of legislation, and when Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi start spinning the mainstream media with a story, I think you can see how the media reacted in the last 2 weeks with this Russians stole the election fake story, based on nothing, based on a leak to the Washington Post and New York Times of a report that no one had seen by an anonymous source, that this was a strategy. So the media will be the foot soldiers of the obstructionist Democrats. And look, the Democrats have so much at stake. They have to do everything they can to stop Donald Trump's agenda, because Donald Trump's agenda will work, and those Rust Belt Democrats who voted for Obama in 200 counties and flipped over and voted for the Republican Donald Trump will be there again, and possibly be there for a generation if Donald Trump delivers. And I believe he will deliver. I believe that the strategies will work. I think the brain trust that he has put together is so formidable and smart, and understand that the media is their enemy. Unlike so many other Republicans, I think they're going to be successful.
All right, let me take a quick break here, Professor Hirsen. And by the way, you can go to James Hirsen, that's HIRSEN.com is his website. Let me take a quick break. We got some more interesting conversation in just a moment.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Welcome back to Focus Today, and what a delight and an honor to have with us today Professor James Hirsen, JD. He's a law professor, has a master's in media psychology, New York Times best-selling author, and we're talking to him about a variety of things. Professor Hirsen, before I get off all of this, you made quick mention that you think that the President-elect Trump's appointments so far to his cabinet have been brilliant. It's amazing how many outsiders he has coming into government. I hope that they don't get frustrated with bureaucracy. We'll see. Any concerns so far about any of the picks?
I have none. I understand the thinking behind each of the picks, and the outsider status, which, by the way, is kind of funny. One of the guys I know is who was picked for Treasury Secretary, Steve Minuchin, because I work in the Hollywood community. I know the two Steves, Steve Minuchin and Steve Bannon. And Steve Minuchin, one of the things that came up with breathlessly, we heard political experts saying, well, he's never had a government position. And, well, I guess they didn't notice, but America voted for a guy who's never had a government position. And you said the word outsider. I think America is longing for outsiders. The corruption in the political world has reached a point we cannot tolerate it anymore. And so much of it came out during this election season. And so the idea of having outsiders and people that have accomplished things in real life, as Steve Minuchin has, also his pick of military people like, I love saying his nickname, Mad Dog Mattis for defense. Mad Dog Mattis, the general, is someone who in the military, even if you have people, I happen to have a godson who's in the Marines, it's not like they endorse General Mattis. It's not like they support General Mattis. They adore General Mattis. He's the type of general that all of a sudden people on the front lines see him right with them, sleeping on the ground and eating the K rations. He's a legendary figure. He's the modern day Patton. So yeah, I can see the logic behind each of them. And I think, what Trump has done is act as a CEO would and try to put a team together for each specific job. Who is the best for the job? I just mentioned two things. In the world of business that I work in daily, one of the most important assets is a relationship. Business transactions, significant ones, usually you'll find a business relationship that's nurtured over the years. Trump understands this, so two of his picks reflect this. he chose the governor of Iowa, Terry Branstad, to be the ambassador to China. The governor of Iowa knew the current premier of China when he was a young man, before he ever really was in a leadership position. They are best friends. That's, as you would say, that's golden. And the relationship of Exxon CEO Rex Tillerson with the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, is gold. That is powerful. It's an asset for America that you pick someone that is trusted and respected. And both of these men are respected. They're not going to go there and, cave like the current administration has over and over again. They're going to go and negotiate with strength and with the interest of the American people in mind. And so just those examples fill me with optimism.
That's very interesting. With the exception maybe of Rick Perry, even though President-elect Trump has talked to all of his other opponents, and some were considered seriously, he didn't pick any of his other opponents. What does that tell you?
Well, I mean, I like I said, I just think he's picking the best person for the job. Though I love what Charles Krauthammer said about Rick Perry. He said that deep down in his soul, Donald Trump is still a showman, and he understands scripts. And he wrote the amazing screenplay of picking the man, Rick Perry, to head a department that in a previous campaign, Rick Perry said he wanted to abolish but couldn't remember the name of. It's so dramatic. But actually, Rick Perry is a very good pick. But I thought that was I know Charles said that tongue in cheek, but I think in the end, Trump is a non-political animal. There's a couple of the picks that I know involved. There was a little bit of payback, but the fact that he graciously, at least picked Rick Perry and met with Mitt Romney, and even graciously met with people like Al Gore and Leo DiCaprio, it shows that what he wants to be is president of all the people, but he's not going to compromise his principles. So after he met with Al Gore and Leo DiCaprio, he chose Mark Pruitt, perhaps which caused the media to go into a frenzy and call Pruitt a global warming denier, which is for them, just a sinful state. But it just shows Trump is sticking to his guns.
A couple things here, Professor. One is these cabinet nominees, as they go through the vetting process at the U.S. Senate, do you think the Republicans in the Senate will hold tight and give Trump his cabinet?
Well, they won't hold tight enough. I mean, there's some of them that want a grandstand, as we've already seen. I don't have any problem naming the names. I mean, John McCain and Lindsey Graham have already established the same pattern that they had in previous administrations, including George Bush. They're going to get publicity and get appearances on the media by being obstructionists. They threaten to join with the Democrats. Although Mitch McConnell says in the end, these picks will be approved, especially since Harry Reid changed the rules of the Senate, something he regrets now, the so-called nuclear option, which took away the filibuster for these approvals. Of course, many of them don't require Senate approval. Like I mentioned, the aforementioned Steve Bannon, who's the chief strategist, thankfully is not going to go through a hearing process.
What happens to Hollywood now? Are they in recovery or they're just in denial?
Well, the problem in Hollywood is if you want to buy Play-Doh or coloring books or you need pet therapy dogs, they're very rare because, they've been used up by the citizens of Hollywood. No, Hollywood is a place, it's a bubble. It's a very strange community. And they have bought what the Huffington Post and Mother Jones and MSNBC had told them for a year and a half. that Hillary was inevitable, that Trump shouldn't be taken seriously, that he'd never be in. And they've even bought, if you look at the social media, this idea that somehow they'd be able to sway the Electoral College. Now there's some rumor circulating in Hollywood that when the electoral votes are counted on January 6th, which is required by our laws, that somehow they're going to get certain members of Congress to object to the votes and stop. They're always trying to stop Trump. They're going to try for an impeachment. I mean, this is going to be their whole thing. I mean, if we thought when George W. Bush was president that Hollywood was deranged, we're seeing something so far beyond that. So, yeah, they do not accept this. But the sad thing for the Hollywood community is their credibility, much like the mainstream media, is really down the tubes. I mean, Hillary Clinton tried an all-celebrity push in the last days of her campaign. Celebrities gave money, organized PSAs, endorsed her. It didn't work.
So, to Al Gore for a moment. He's got another documentary coming out. I guess it's going to be debuted during the Sundance Film Festival. President-elect Trump did meet with Al Gore. That was kind of interesting. Al Gore actually came out and said it was a substantive meeting. Then he turns around and he nominates Scott Pruitt to be EPA secretary. I mean, you got to love this stuff. Where's Al Gore? Where's he going? I mean, is he got 1 foot on Earth and 1 foot on Mars? Or what's going on here?
On any planet that he occupied, no one rationally would take Al Gore seriously. Well, but one, because of his hypocrisy, and two, because of his terrible predictions. Al Gore's hypocrisy is shown by the biggest deal he's done is selling current TV to Al Jazeera, which is owned by the Sharia law government of Qatar, which accounts for 13% of the very fossil fuels that Al Gore rails against. So, and the other thing is he said the sea level would rise and the poor people that live on the sea, you know, some of them would lose their homes, they'd drown. And then he went out and bought a mansion on the sea in Montecito, California, 6,500 square foot, very high carbon footprint place with 9 bathrooms. He wouldn't be taken seriously, but people at Paramount Studios, and I understand there may have been George Soros money involved in the financing of the sequel, they think Al Gore's positioned very well. They think during a Trump administration that people are going to be searching for a champion of what used to be called global warming, which now is called climate change because the data doesn't fit, and that Al Gore is just the guy to maybe win another Nobel Prize, another Oscar, and have this new film, which is in editing right now. It's almost completed. And I suspect it will be almost as boring as the first one, which, was essentially Al Gore giving lectures on PowerPoint. I mean, anyone staying awake in that deserves an award. And this one might be in 3D because Al Gore's a bit bigger now. So you may have to use, more technology. But they're ready to embrace him across the country. Which is now called climate change. The climate change groups.
How do your students take your levity? It's refreshing. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That's the only way for me to survive in this crazy community.
Yeah, good for you. Hey, listen, you're a delight. Let's keep connected, okay? As we get into the first 100 days, let's see how things go from your perspective. Thank you for your work. And I can say to our viewers and listeners, you can go to James Hirsen. That's HIRSEN.com. I would assume your articles are there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, tons of them going back for years, archived.
All right, good for you.
And a Merry Christmas to you, Perry. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
Best to you, friend. God bless. Have a great one. Talk to you soon.
God bless you.
All right. We'll be right back.